your interest. We encourage public participation in our meeting. Your comments are important to our decision-making process. There'll be two opportunities in our meeting to address the commission.
We've started. I just wanted you guys to know we've started.
The first will come when we ask for a public comment for items not on the agenda. The second will come when there are public hearings, and there are a number of public hearings that we're going to deal with tonight. Anyone addressing the commission will approach the podium, give your first and last name, and your complete physical address. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Yana, would you call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Austin? Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Weaver? Mr. Pennington?
Present.
Mr. Sproles?
Here.
Mr. Wilson? And Mr. Schuman?
Here. All right, next order of business is approval of the minutes, the regular meeting, July 24th, 2023. Has everybody had an opportunity to review those minutes? Is there a motion that they be accepted, or are there any corrections or additions?
I'll make a motion the minutes be approved as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any additional discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I want to note that the minutes were very complete, considering the amount of discussion that we had last meeting. Just comments that I thought they were very good. Public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there anybody signed up to do that? Okay, if not, then the certificates of appropriateness and special use permits. The first order of business is special use permit, Cillian James Haggerty, 370 East Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia, 24210. Special use permit for signage located at 370 East Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia, 24210. Tax map 013-1-82. Staff report.
Okay, good evening. The applicants are requesting approval of a special use permit, and their main objective is to add 2 monument signs to the property to advertise the entryway to the proposed development called the East Village. The primary focus is unifying these businesses around a shared parking area and easements. The first monument sign will be located on East Main Street, and the second monument sign will be located on Park Street. This is allowed through Section 8-4-2 of the Community Design Standards. That is a special use permit for a comprehensive sign plan. So in general, we have seen, I think the last one we saw was Barry's, where they came in and were looking at a comprehensive sign plan for a subdivision. So currently, there's existing signage visible on the properties of Sweet Bay Brewing, Brazen Raven Coffee Roasters, and the Girl in the Raven. However, the applicants are interested in these properties all functioning as one location. And so that's what they're proposing. That's what they're proposing tonight. You can see the type of signage here on the screen. It is also in your packets. And we'll talk a little bit more about how they tend to want to unify these properties. So you can see here an example of how these properties are connected. It's a little bit of a slow connection to there we go. So if you notice here where it says East Village sign, that's where the proposal for the first sign, the monument sign, is proposed. If you see down here, they're looking to put their second monument sign on Park Street. And if you look at this map, basically there is a building here that is not commercial at the moment. The Girl in the Raven is on the corner. You have AMT engineering here, and then the rest of this property in between is the brewery. And then back here in the corner is the option for a future bike shop, and the Brazen Raven Coffee Roasters is going to be located there. I won't go into all the details of the overall dimensions of the sign, but the basic consistency is that the signs will be black and gold. and they will be made from vinyl, aluminum, or similar flat surface. The base will be made out of stone, and the top of them would have a wood frame. So, there are already some signs on some of the buildings. So when we're talking about a comprehensive sign plan, we really need to look at what is all out there and then what they're asking to approve. So all of the signs that are currently on the properties would be part of this master sign plan. So in the future, if you all approved it, and a sign or a business came in or left and a new sign was requested, instead of coming back to you for each one of those as with a COA, they would basically just come to staff. So the idea really is create almost like a mini zoning ordinance in and of itself, so that the signage that exists, the sizing of the signage, the look and feel of the signage is all similar. And that's what they're looking at to unify this area. So the Ice House building is on Park Street, and on there they're proposing two smaller signs, so a 4-foot by 5-foot rectangular sign, or alternatively a 5-foot diameter circular sign. And those would have either the logos or wording, but again, those are not things that we actually review at this level. The Sweet Bay Outbuilding is proposed to have a sign on it. The 370 East Main Street is proposed to have a sign on it, and 380 East Main Street is also proposed to have a sign on it. Again, as each of those signs came into the office and were approved, we would be doing that strictly at the staff level. Let's see if I can show you the signs that are existing right now. So here we have existing signage on Sweet Bay Brewing Company on their building at the rear of the property. There is a post here that used to have a sign on it at 370 East Main Street. That's going to be required to be removed as part of the conditions. You have this existing Brazen Raven Coffee Roasters. You have this existing Girl in the Raven sign. Then you have a multitude of other Girl in the Raven signs here. Quite a few leading to the drive-through, and then you can see here we get into the entrances. So we'll talk about conditions as we move into the area, but some of the key things that we really need to talk about is the access and how these are all connecting together. So if this was a new subdivision and they were each coming in with a plan and roads and all of that, it probably would make a lot more sense. When we're trying to unify all of these together, one of the key things that we are looking at is ensuring that the access easement is acceptable for every one of the property owners. So, for example, we'll just start at the front from 370 and work our way inward. The main entrance, one of the main entrances that they're proposing is coming in off of 370 East Main Street. That currently is a parcel that we are requiring to at least have an access across the Girl in the Raven property. The reason that we're asking for that is that we cannot force one-way traffic through 370 through this parcel and then force it into the brewery property. We really need to have it have an easily accessible location to exit the property. Another thing that we are requesting is to ensure that this is diagonal parking going into 370 East Main Street. We stood outside there and watched multiple people come in and out using this as an in or an out. So currently, since it's functioning that way, we really need the property to be redesigned so that you have an entrance only onto this site. The second thing that we need to ensure is that basically you have a permanently constructed entrance into the Girl in the Raven. So you can see here currently, this is a parking area that people are using. And we did see the occasional parking or the occasional car that would cut through this area. So we really need to ensure that as this becomes an established easement, that the parking is diagonal, it is facing forward, so that there isn't any rear movement coming back onto Main Street. This is the location for establishing the egress across the Girl in the Raven property. And then as you're moving into the property, establishing an easement through each of the properties. So you can see here, they are requesting a one-way in on 370 East Main Street. Staff is requesting at least an egress to Deadmore across the Girl and the Raven property. And then as you move into the brewery property, you are then going to Park Street. And then at Park Street, they're proposing both a two-way easement across that property, in and out. There is no proposal for an egress or an ingress across the brewery's property on this end. That is something that staff had originally requested, and they chose not to submit that. So with that, we have established, and here's the Park Street ingress and egress. So with that, we've established a number of conditions that we are suggesting that the Planning Commission review. The first is that they would need to have at least a 15-foot wide easement that links the parcels as listed here. The permanent easement must identify that this area is for vehicular and pedestrian movement. The permanent easement must consist of pavement, concrete, or gravel surface and be maintained in perpetuity by the owners. The permanent easement documentation must be signed by all property owners and recorded with each parcel. The permanent easement documentation will identify the maintenance plan for easement and responsible parties for each parcel. The applicants need to submit internal directional signage for traffic flow. That includes designs, materials, dimensions. That would become part of their comprehensive sign package. We would want the removal of the Girl and the Raven open sign, because now we would end up with basically 4 signs in a row that all have Girl and the Raven on them. And we're trying to eliminate sign clutter on East Main Street. Remove the previous signpost located at 370 East Main Street. Submit a parking plan for spaces for all businesses located in the East Village prior to approval. The driveway for 370 East Main Street will have to have angled parking, which will distinguish this as a one-way entrance. And then a thing that we do require whenever a new business or an action is taken on a property, that all dumpsters, either new or existing, would be fully enclosed as required by our ordinance. So with that, and for the public and those who are in the audience, the Planning Commission's role is to make a recommendation to the town council. So the action tonight, approval or denial, does not actually, is not the final step. So special use permits are actually approved by town council, and this will go forward next Monday, or actually, I think it's next Tuesday, because Monday's a holiday. So with that, I can answer questions. I know a variety of applicants, owners are in the audience, and they can come up and also make additional comments, and you can have
Just-
questions for them.
The minutes need to reflect that Mr. Wilson's joined the meeting. Sorry. So the next step is a presentation from the applicants. If there's any of the applicants who want to speak on behalf of this,
That would be me. Speaking for, there's several of us involved. Also, I have some additional printouts for you.
Go ahead, Nate,
Sorry.
and introduce yourself. Sorry.
Nathan Berg, 24383 Walden Road, Avenue, Virginia, 24210. And so as I was saying, I have some additional maps that I had Mr. Halsey, the surveyor, do. They weren't ready. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the one. And so there's a couple of small changes that I've added to that, which mostly to do with the width of the one easement. I've also, I'm showing where those monument signs would be located as well. Let me just kind of give some context for this project. Currently, we have the Ice House under contract, and it is our goal to really make that a viable retail space, and also a space for Girl and the Raven to expand their coffee roasting operations and grow that business. Currently, they're using the smaller building that is just behind Golden Raven. They're thankfully seeing much success with their coffee roasting business and would like to expand that. Also, additionally, something that Abingdon has needed for quite some time is a larger and more robust bike shop. And we felt that the Ice House would be a perfect location for something like that. However, with retail, such as a bike shop, unless you have some visibility on Main Street, it would be very hard to be successful as a business. And so this will provide Main Street visibility for that potential business that would go there. We've also talked about having another smaller business in the Ice House as well. That's still yet to be determined. But we have currently a couple of people interested in the bike shop, but their interest is contingent on having Main Street accessibility. And really, the synergy between a coffee shop, a brewery, and a bike shop could be really neat. Those things kind of all go together. It could be kind of become almost a meeting place for people that are into biking and outdoor recreation. And so we feel like it would be a really great addition to the town, and hopefully with your input, figure out a great way to make this happen.
You heard the conditions that Ms. Rice outlined in terms of parking and ingress and egress. Is that suitable to what you want to do?
Yes, absolutely. We've had lots of great back and forth discussions, and I think all of those things would be achievable. You guys are kind of getting the rough and ready plan. We would, with a little bit more time, and once we know that this is a viable option, then we will have some much prettier drawings for you, for the staff and everyone to look at. Obviously, there's some work to be done with obtaining the permanent easements as well as signage easements, and all of that will be done once this meets your approval. We were kind of waiting to get your thumbs up before we start investing a lot of resources in doing that.
Other questions for Mr. Berg?
A couple things. One is, I think you listed this as a 12-foot easement coming in between the properties. I was thinking that was a 15-foot as far as staff requirements.
We are requesting a 12-foot easement simply because the existing entrance and pavement is one lane. One lane is, you can achieve one lane with 12 feet. And we didn't see a need, if the pavement is already 12 feet wide, we didn't see necessarily there being a need for a larger easement. That's something that's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it would certainly be more desirable for the landowners involved for that to be a 12-foot easement.
Well, I mean, I was looking earlier, I don't know how much space there is behind the engineering office to the loading docks on the warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
You get pinched there, but one of the questions I had is why, I understand the signage on Main Street, and I appreciate that. Why is not the entrance, though, off of Deadmore?
Off of Deadmore?
Yes.
Because Deadmore is a less traveled road.
Well, I mean, no, have your signage on Main,
Uh-huh.
and then just have the entrance, though, off of Deadmore. And my only concern is having another commercial entrance. You've got your entrance right beside Girl and Raven, you've got your entrance on Deadmore Street, and now all of a sudden you want to put this.
So the 370 is actually currently a mixed-use semi-commercial.
Residential,
It's residential and commercial. So we would actually not be adding any additional commercial entrances. That's
Well,
all.
hopefully you're going to be adding traffic.
Traffic into the space, but nobody will be coming out. So I think I think to your point, if you have traffic entering Main Street, additional traffic entering Main Street, that poses a greater, that's more complicated, right? But we're talking about traffic entering from Main Street, and then they would be exiting onto Park Street.
I know staff has looked at this and transportation as well, and they've signed off on it. VDOT, if you were coming in with a blank slate, treating all of these properties as one, obviously it wouldn't be designed in this fashion.
Certainly not.
You know, but be it as it may, coming in there, you've got the access going out on the backside of Girl and a Raven. I've got a couple maps, and there seems to be some confusion.
You're probably,
Yes.
so there's been kind of several iterations of our plan.
This is one of them, showing exiting in between
Mhm.
the brewery and the engineering office
Mhm.
as a two-way, and that's actually a 20-foot area through there, larger. In treating all of these, you all make a reference in your application and to treat everything as one property. Why is that not included
Currently-
as an additional access? And my concern is you're directing all of the traffic back out Park, which is right in front of the fire station. So if the brewery has an event, you all have an event, anything of that nature, all of the traffic is going that way,
Mhm.
exiting.
So-
All of a sudden,
Are
go ahead.
are you saying if I'm at the brewery, I have to leave by Park Street?
No.
Okay, so that
You-
answers that, Jeff.
Right, here's, let me
My
choose
only
my.
question is recorded easements on that. And, you know, I had questions as to who the grantors and who the grantees on the easements.
Right,
And that all the parties understand that when you're recording these easements, those are clouds on the title, that in essence is gonna be in perpetuity.
correct.
And it's actually cutting, you know, you're separating the properties. As far as the brewery property is cut in half, going through it.
Right, and
So-
those are non-exclusive easements, so they obviously, the brewery owners will have use of that. However, you're right, and everybody involved, and, you know, they're all here, they are aware of what a permanent easement is.
So I guess if it's, would you all be adverse to granting an easement coming out of the brewery?
Our preference is not to, simply because right now there is a gate that at some points in the day closes that off. Now, in reality, it almost always stays open, but our preference would be to not have that as part of the permanent easement. You know, we're already asking quite a bit of the various property owners. I think that would be, you know, a bridge too far. If we can make this current arrangement work, it would be our preference to have it as submitted.
So if I come in from Park Street, you know, past the ice house, you know, it's kind of gravel right now.
Yeah.
Is that gonna be denoted somehow or paved? And when I get to the brewery parking lot, is that just, okay, you can go through the brewery parking lot, or is it actually gonna be like a paved road that goes through there?
We
How is
will,
that
so,
marked?
right, so if you come behind the ice house, that will be most likely paved. The brewery parking lot is partly gravel, partly pavement. And so with that, there would not be any marking on the gravel. There's no way to mark gravel. But there would be signage, and there would be visual indicators by using landscaping and planters to kind of direct people to where they need to go.
So, I mean, you're gonna have a meets and bounds description attached to the easement.
That's
Which
right.
I'm assuming is gonna be similar to this.
So
But
that.
there's no, as far as, if I'm coming in, yeah, it's not a big property, I can figure it out, but the easement area itself is not gonna be definitively marked as to whether it's paved or
Parts of
arrows.
it, right, parts of it will be definitively marked, parts of it will not be. And I think it will be clearly marked on a surveyed plat, similar to what you have in your hands there. And that is what will be recorded at the courthouse.
Additional questions?
Not on that, I've got a couple on the signs.
It seems to me, though, when you get to the brewery property and you turn, it just needs to be like a radius or something,
Yeah,
since if it's only be like 12 feet or 15 feet, but.
Now, right now what we have is a proposal from staff as to what the requirements are, so if you see an additional, if you see something additional for the requirements that you think is reasonable, there's no reason not to include it. Otherwise,
Well-
it's not a,
It's a little bit of a moot point, because if it's not demarked in any way and there's no actual on-the-ground, paving of a road, then it doesn't really matter if the easement's like what it is, as long as it gets from one end to the other, I guess.
The only issue I had with it was the additional ingress and egress coming off of Deadmore. If you're treating the property as one property, then you're coming in there, that gives you an additional exit point back out on Deadmore instead of having to go to Park. And, like Scott said, it's open anyway. It's utilized as ingress and egress now. If you're treating the property as one property, then just add that, and I think you've got efficient flow. And then from a safety standpoint, hopefully, I agree with this use. I think it's a good use, and I hope it's very busy, but you're directing all of the traffic back out on Park, which passes right in front of the fire station. So just from a safety and a traffic standpoint, if it doesn't impose that much of a hardship and it's already being utilized as that, you've got 20 feet from the building to the inside of the curb. Just include that as an additional easement area. And I think you promote traffic flow.
now you said you had a question about the signs?
The only question I had was on the ice house. I think you all requested 3 signs.
yes, there
Yeah.
would potentially be 3 tenants located in that building.
And you're just gonna stay in, without knowing the dimensions of the building and the lineal footage and then what's permitted, as far as being attached to a wall sign, anything of that nature. It's hard to say, yeah, you got one on this side for this business, you got another one on the other side.
Mhm.
As long as you all are in compliance with the sign ordinance right there.
Again, this is something that we didn't have time to get into the packet, but if you want to pass that down, this is what we're proposing. And again, we can, if you provide conditional approval, then at that point, we can make some prettier pictures and clarify any of this that needs a little bit more detail.
And that's only on the brewery side?
There would be, on the Park Street side, that would be facing the brewery, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then on the Park Street side, there would be signage for the Brazen Raven, which this side. And it could, whether it's over that door or moved to the left, there's some flexibility there, but these are things that are not necessarily set in stone at this point.
Well, and the ordinance would control that. Am I correct about that? That when
Are
they-
you asking for a variance? See, that's what Are you
We're not asking for a
variance?
variance, so we're actually requesting that we have a comprehensive sign plan created. And so we're creating, essentially, we would have to comply with whatever guidelines were established at the creation of the comprehensive sign plan.
Which we can go through when we say, hey, you know, both signs on the Main Street and Park Street are approved. You know, but the two building signs are approved. And then, you know, on the Ice House, on that side, in theory, you could specify, you know, you comply with the sign ordinance
Right.
as far as your square footage.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
And this does, I mean, the contents of the plan does give a lot of flexibility. So what
Yeah.
they're basically proposing is within that. It's the maximum number and maximum size of proposed signs. So that is one of the things that they get the flexibility to ask for. Now, they haven't added illumination to any of these, but
Illumination.
I don't think you have any lighting on any of these signs.
Oh,
or-
I thought you said
Yeah.
illumination.
Sorry.
Illumination.
Yeah.
Yes, so we would also, the monument signs would be illuminated by uplighting that would shine from the ground, illuminating it. And that, I would be happy to make that one of the conditions, is that we provide us an acceptable lighting plan. So we have the Ice House under contract, and that, we would like to close on that building in September. And so, your approval is one of our contingencies. And so this is why some of this is not fully baked, and I realize that. This is why we're requesting a conditional approval, so that then we can work with staff to come up with a more detailed, comprehensive sign plan that is, you know, has all these details worked out.
Well, I mean, with what you've got relative to the brewery side and the Park Street side, I don't have a concern with, you know, which then just goes back to my only concern would be the additional ingress and egress on that. Where, because it's already utilized as that, it would promote an additional exit, breaking the traffic up, eliminating it from in front of the fire station. That would be my only point.
I think those are all valid points, and at this point, it was, be a discussion with the property owners to see if that's acceptable.
Yes, sir.
All right, if there's nothing else, this is a public hearing, and so I'm going to open the public hearing. And if there's anybody from the public who wishes to discuss what we've heard from the applicant or from staff, now's the time to do that. So is there anybody who wishes to be heard? Well, yes, sir.
Lawrence Patrick Atkins, see if I can remember my address, 25287 White Ridge Drive, 24211. I guess a lot of the nitty-gritty details have been discussed in great detail, so I just have some rhetoric that I've prepared, and thank you for hearing me. Members, thank you for your time and consideration in the matter of the East Village proposal. Sorry, I'm the owner of, my wife and I are the owners of Sweet Bay Brewing Company. Leanne and I are grateful to be part of this community of business owners, and we have done our best to dig in and get to know folks, especially ones who are interested in building the town up, while helping each other and working together to achieve something great and attractive to keep downtown looking good. We believe allowing this plan, including the easements, will result in a more intuitive accessibility for our combined sort of experiences of our businesses and what we create, what we try to create on the east side of Main Street. And the signage allowance will allow us greater exposure, of course, shining a light on sort of our collaborative spirits and wanting to bolster the town and calculated growth, particularly again on the east side of Main Street. As proud Abingdon business owners now, Leanne and I approach the calling with a collaborative spirit and a drive for symbiosis. We believe we can work together to mutually benefit each other directly, as well as the town and other businesses, both directly and indirectly. In addition to this plan, we currently have or are actively working toward collaborations with other local businesses, including but not limited to Brazen Raven Coffee, Wolf Hills Coffee, Tumbling Creek Cider, Kelly's Ridge Farm, which is in Meadowview, but also tied to sort of Tumbling Creek, Windale Farm, White Birch, Abingdon Vineyards, River Feet, countless local musicians that we host and pay to play at our venue. And others. The list will continue to grow as we value symbiosis between local businesses, like we said. We aim to support one another and further make Abingdon an excellent place to visit and grow and extend our roots. Leanne and I thank you again for your time and work in considering this idea. We hope you will grant it your collective blessing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak from the public? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. And what is the pleasure of the commission? Is there a motion to, we can add this?
I would make a motion that we approve the COA as presented, their comprehensive sign plan, with provision, in addition to staff's recommendations, that an additional easement be granted between the engineering building and the existing brewery exiting on Deadmore to promote, one, an additional exit, but also to basically divide traffic both ways for safety reasons.
Are you willing to add the lighting, that they need to provide a
They
lighting
need to
plan?
come back. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you. Applicant also needs to come back to staff with a lighting plan, illumination for the monument signs.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any additional discussion? If not, Ms. Rice, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Johnson?
Yay.
Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
Aye.
And so they're recommending their approval to the town council, which will meet next week. So,
Thank you, guys.
if you want to add anything to the packet, I have to get it to Kim for tomorrow, so.
We're working away.
Okay.
All right, next order of business, special use permit, Wahlberg Construction, 238 West Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia, 24210. Special use permit for signage located at 238 West Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia, 24210. Tax map 012-1-127. Staff report.
Okay, so again, you're hearing a comprehensive sign plan, so it's a special use permit, per section 8-4-2 of the community design standards. So the applicants are requesting to add signs to the property to illustrate the name of the marketplace and the presence of the tenants. So one sign will be located above the main entryway on West Main Street with a monogram logo below it, so you can see that here in the image. Two signs will be on the wall of the north elevation with another sign established on the existing projecting sign. So here's the existing projecting sign. And, let's see, and here's the the wording on Main Street. 2 monument signs will be located, let me just get to those here. 2 monument signs will be located near the entryway on West Main Street and Remsburg Drive. 6 minor signs will be located between the archways of the east elevation of the main structure, and 2 wall signs located above the tenant businesses on the east elevation of the rear addition. An additional wall sign will be placed on the detached teller structure on Remsburg Drive. So let me show you where those are all. So you're having tenant signage in between here that identifies the different businesses. And then on the, this is where Tumbling Creek Cider currently exists. They do want a sign there. This Carter Bank and Trust signage will be converted into signage, a monument sign for the businesses. And this is a little bit more of an overview of it from just a site plan perspective. So, the signs that we all are looking at, these are all entrance corridor. So the last one was a little bit different because some of them were on Park Street, which wouldn't have been, you know, traditional entrance corridor signage. Some of them were on East Main Street. These are all on West Main Street or Remsburg, and the entire parcel is in the entrance corridor. So, the primary signage that will also have lighting, and the applicants can correct us if we are incorrect at this time, but there is lighting proposed, unlike the last one, there is lighting that's proposed here on Main Street. And that is to accentuate the Abingdon Commons statement. The monument sign will be installed perpendicular near the main entrance on West Main Street. It's going to measure 8 by 6 feet, and it'll display the marketplace name on the top and the tenant signage below that. We've actually been working with the applicants to discuss this large sign that is currently right here that identifies all of the different ways you can turn and how to get to I-81. And so they're actually proposing to even move that back, still within the VDOT standards, but to move that away from the front of their structure. So let's see if we got a good sign. Right, I'm just going to pull up the aerial. But the monument sign is basically going to be in front of the large tree. This is in your packet, and I apologize that I don't have any page numbers here, but the monument sign is going to be basically in front of the large tree, and then they're going to move the existing sign east that is currently directly in front of their building at this time. There are 6 color designs submitted for the 2 monument signs placed on West Main Street and Remsburg Drive. You can have a discussion with the applicant, but the applicant prefers options 2 and 3 to be the ideal color design. And let's see if we can get here. That might not work. Just trying to show it for the public. So if you see here in your packet, there's 2 and 3, which is basically a white or a beige type background. The 6 minor signs that are underneath each of the archways would be 1.5 feet by 3 feet. And they indicate that right now they would be the nature of the products that are inside the building. Again, we, in the process of going through an approval, do not dictate what can or cannot be on the sign. So you truly are really looking at the colors, you're looking at the shape, and you are looking at the size of the signs. In your packet, there is a color and font for all of the signs. This one perhaps is even more cohesive than the last one because, again, there aren't individual businesses there yet. And so the proposal does include a palette that would unify all of the signs together. And then currently, if you see signage on the Tumbling Creek Cider and you're asking, well, how come that didn't come in front of us? The key thing there is we just permitted that as temporary signage. So knowing that they were just going to be there for a short period of time, we said, let's not go through the entire process. We're just going to have it as temporary signage. So with that, this one we have quite a few less conditions because there aren't all of the additional layers of easements. And so If you have any questions for us or any questions to the applicant, you can ask them at this time, and they're here to give a presentation.
Any questions for Ms. Rice? If not, we'll hear from the applicant.
Hello again, Nathan Berg, 24383 Walden Road, Avenue, Virginia. Questions?
Anybody have any questions for Nate?
Are you just looking for insight, Mr. Berg, as far as 2 and 3?
Yeah, I mean, we have some options there, I think.
It appears that, as best I can tell, it's probably the number 2 would match the lettering
Mhm.
in color. Am I wrong on that, or?
Yeah.
I like 2.
Thank you, Kurt.
Well, I like I don't like the dark. I think it's easier to read whether it's 2 or 3. I think it's easier to read with those, either one of those 2 color schemes. Any additional questions for Mr. Berg? All right, thank you, Nate.
Right, thank you very much.
Okay, this is again a public hearing, so I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to address this issue? If so, you're welcome to come up now. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, but I sure do like this gavel, by the way. Anyway, so that closed the public hearing. Any additional discussion from the Planning Commission? If not, is there a motion regarding this application for special use permit?
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Ms. Weiss, if you call the roll.
Mr. Johnson?
Yay.
Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
Ah. All right. Next order of business is certificate of appropriateness, Wahlberg Construction, 238 West Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia. Certificate of appropriateness for exterior changes located at 238 West Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia. Tax map 012-1-127. Staff report.
Gabriel Christofari, Town of Abington. So yes, Nathan Berg of Wahlberg Construction, applicant and owner, has requested approval of an entrance quarter certificate of appropriateness for exterior changes to the rear concrete block addition. The property is located at 238 West Main Street. We just reviewed this one for the comprehensive sign plan that they want for that. Some background, Abington Commons will be occupying Carter Bank and Trust former location. The existing rear building is made of CMU. Access to the site will continue to be West Main Street and Rimsburg Drive. Some staff findings. The applicant proposes to construct a wooden pergola and deck using rough sawn timbers sealed with a natural finish located on the east elevation of the rear CMU structure. The proposed wooden pergola and deck will run towards the Rimsburg Drive entrance facing east towards the visitor center. Additionally, the applicant proposes to add windows that match the style of the existing windows on the building. The material will be aluminum storefront windows with the color being dark bronze. Proposed door material above the deck will be aluminum with the color being dark bronze as well. The railing on the deck will be made of black iron. The proposed pergola has a height of 16 feet 7 inches, width of 10 feet 10 inches, and a length of 101 feet 6 inches across the front elevation of the rear building. The proposed deck has a height of 8 feet 7 inches, width of 16 feet, and a length of 42 feet 10 inches across the east side of the front elevation. That's all I've got for you. If there's any questions about the pergola or anything, that's in the staff report. I can try to answer them. If not, the applicant's here to answer any other questions you may have for them.
Questions? Thank you.
Nathan Berg again. Do I need to keep giving my address to you?
Yeah, you're supposed to.
24383 Walden Road, Avenue, Virginia. Yeah, so this is, as you know, that, we've created this beautiful brick archway, and we're stuck with this kind of ugly, boring CMU building in the back. This is a way for us to enhance the front of that building, creating a nice seating area for the future tenant, which we have a signed lease, so I can now say it's going to be Delta Blues, opening a second location. If you've had a chance to eat their barbecue on State Street, it's incredible. So I'm really looking forward to them being in that space along with Tumbling Creek Cidery, but that this will create just a really nice way to dress that front up.
Questions for Mr. Byrd? Thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
This is not a public hearing because it's a certificate of appropriateness, but if anyone from the public would wish to comment at this time, we would welcome any input. If not, what is the pleasure of the commission? I mean, I think this ties in with what you're doing for the rest of the building.
I would make a motion that we accept the certificate of appropriateness as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second
All right. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Johnson?
it. Yes.
Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
Aye. All right, the next order of business is certificate of appropriateness, Marathon Realty, parcel number 021-8-7, Cook Street Avenue, Virginia 24210. Certificate of appropriateness for construction located at parcel number 021-8-7, Cook Street Avenue, Virginia 24210, tax map 021-8-7. A staff report.
Gabriel Christofari, Town of Abington. So Marathon Realty Corporation and Appalachia Design Services have requested approval of a certificate of appropriateness for a new commercial hardware store, Ace Hardware, located at parcel 021-8-7, located in the Town of Abington, Virginia. The property is within the General Business Zoning District B2 and is within the Meadows Planned Unit Development. As such, there is a requirement for the approval of an entrance quarter certificate of appropriateness, as well as additional standards identified in the covenant. Background: the site is part of the Meadows Planned Unit Development. The design, uses, entrance locations, and the final plat dictate many of the requirements on the parcels located within the Meadows. This project is subject to those requirements as well as the entrance quarter requirements identified in the Town of Abington zoning ordinance. Access to the site will continue to be Cook Street. Some staff findings. The applicant has indicated they will return to the Planning Commission for approval concerning future signage related to the project, so that I will be returning you to that. Concerning the elevation drawings, the applicant has provided elevation drawings. The elevation drawings meet the minimum design requirements stated in the Meadows Restricted Covenant. Instead of going through all the numbers that are in your packet, it goes well beyond what they are required to have for the elevations, using natural brick or stone or whatever it may be. The only one that's one that doesn't fall in there is the tracks cladding, which that's a very small proportion of the whole elevations of each one of them. As with the signage, they will be, final lighting plan will be submitted with the building plans. The landscaping plans can be found on sheet C 6.0. The applicant's providing a total of 2,454 square feet of landscaping along the front of the property. Within the landscaped areas are various types of foliage, including red oaks, dogwoods, azaleas, and Verbraniums. I probably pronounced that wrong. I'm not a plant person. Some other staff findings, the applicants provided a site plan with plantings identified and renderings that show the proposed parking lot landscaping. The landscaping provided appears to soften the visual impact of the proposed development. The hardware store is within a larger development and is therefore buffered on both sides by existing and future developments. The mechanical equipment will be required to be screened when approved through the building permit. All loading docks and trash storage facilities are not visible from the entrance corridor or are screened from view. Dumpsters are enclosed by a brick wall on 3 sides. The structure itself acts as another wall for the dumpster enclosure. On the east side of the structure will be an 8-foot high aluminum fence, pre-finished black. Supporting the shed roof will be wooden posts stained to match the horizontal tracks cladding. That's found on the elevation of the main structure there. The fencing will enclose what is proposed to be an outdoor sales area. The landscaping plans also, again, found on C 6.0. The applicant's providing a total of 1,142 square feet of landscaping parking islands. Within these landscape parking islands are the same types of foliage found along the front of the property, and that meets the requirements as well for what's required in parking lots. Lastly, the applicant provided a site plan that shows a sufficient parking lot. The formatting of the parking stalls, added landscaping, and continued limited access points are all features that the project will complete. Staff worked with the applicant to ensure that the entrances were designed to match the underlying approved site design of the meadows. The parking lot is sufficient for this use. That is all I have for you concerning this project. If you have any questions for me, I can answer them.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
The exit coming out, I was looking for, be on the east side of the building, back onto Cook Street, appears to be over on the town of Abington property. So I'm assuming there's an easement that's
Yes.
been worked out. Does that also align with the entrance into the parking lot on the other side?
Yeah, everything matches up in a sense, yes. It's following the same kind of stuff that kind of the Waffle House and Doug's have too. That kind
Yeah,
of
that's
same
what
shared
I'm
one.
looking
Yeah.
at right there, is just making sure that it aligns directly across from
Yeah.
the cut-through,
Yeah.
you know.
And prior to them coming through with the COA, they did go in front of the town council to make the request for the easement. So that has been approved prior.
Okay.
Other questions? Thank you. The applicant want to address this?
Not Nathan Bird, Stephen Spangler. Stephen Spangler, Marathon Realty, just happy to answer any questions that you may have on this, this project. Pretty straightforward. And, yeah, we submitted it as a generic retail project, but Steve gave me permission to say it is going to be Kurt's Ace Retail, so that is what the
Question for
Fine.
Mr. Spangler?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, this is not a public hearing, but is there anyone from the public who wishes to address this request for certificate of appropriateness? If not, what is the pleasure of the commission?
I'll make a motion the COA be approved as presented.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
All right. Any additional discussion? If not, Ms. Rice, would you call the roll?
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
Aye. Okay, the next order of business is Old and Historic District Expansion, 300 block of East Main Street, 401, 402, and 403, East Main Street, 128 and 124. I'm sorry, yeah, 300 block of East Main Street, 400, 401, 402, 403, East Main Street, 128 and 124, Park Street, 121 and 123, Railroad Street, 110, 115, and 118, Deadmore Street. Staff report.
Okay, so the official request is for a number of parcels that you see identified here in your staff report. I will not name off all of the addresses. The Historic Preservation Review Board started this a number of years ago, and we have several members from the HPRB here tonight to talk more about it. Last year, we had a very successful Historic Preservation Day. In fact, we are going to be doing a second one this year on October 12th because there was a lot of excitement and interest and people participated in it. But the general idea behind that kickoff was really to talk about additional areas for the Olden Historic District. And so in talking with all of the owners along the properties and having the event, there seemed to be momentum to push it forward. And so we have very diligently and slowly gone through the process. In fact, through that process, we actually picked up Dave Dalton's properties here on Park Street, and he requested that he be added into the Olden Historic District. Some of the benefits to the Olden Historic District come in tax relief, but also in the flexibility for setbacks. So that is one of the reasons, and especially if you already have an affinity to preserving historic buildings, and that is part of your mantra, then adding some of that flexibility, adding the tax credits, really enhances your properties being added to the Olden Historic District. So when we're looking at any type of zone map amendment, some of the items that we have to look at is the existing use and character of the properties. We look at the comprehensive plan, we look at the suitability of those properties, we look at the trends and changes, and in this case, as we all know, preserving the Olden Historic District is probably the #1 benefit that Abingdon has done in order to not only preserve history, but also in the fact that it enhances the community. It creates a place where people want to come and see and be tourists and spend their dollars with our local businesses. So this is not really trends in growth or change, but it is in fact actually holding on to the past. You look at the transportation requirements of the community, you look at the conservation of natural resources, and then you look at what the most appropriate use of land is in that locality. And again, I think we have even had conversations here in the past couple of meetings that say, you know, where does the entrance corridor end and where does the Olden Historic District really take off? And a lot of times we'll say, hey, is it just one more building or is it just one more building? And so that's really where we're coming from, is that there is an interest and an excitement to push this forward. As far as what we did, just to let you all know, originally we presented the idea to the HPRB in a formal meeting. We sent letters to each of the property owners and invited them to come to the HPRB meeting. We had no one attend. And then we moved it into this official request for a zone map amendment. So tonight what you would be doing is you're actually amending the zoning map. And again, for the benefit of the public, just like in the previous public hearings, this is a recommendation to the town council. The town council would be the final voters in this situation. We then went through the process of coming in front of the Planning Commission, and with that, staff again sent out notifications to each of the property owners. In addition, when we adopted our updated zoning last year, if you all remember, we started putting an actual physical notice out. I don't know if anybody has gotten a chance to look at those, but basically we put a notice in the ground if it's one that has a public hearing, and we slide the information into the sign so that people, if they have an interest, can call us, can go and look at that. And in all of that, we have found that people were generally supportive of this action, and so tonight we are looking for a recommendation for approval to the town council to expand the historic district based on these parcels that are identified here on the map in front of you and addressed in your packet. With that, we do have 3 members of the Historic Review Board that would be happy to speak to you if you would like to talk to them.
Certainly, if you want to address us, that would be fine.
Thank you. I'm Betsy White. I live at 133 East Main Street, and I'm the chairman of the Architectural Review Board at this time. I'll just add, that was very well said. I'll just add all of our enthusiasm for this step. It is a logical step forward and one that we're very enthusiastic about. I know Abingdon is very proud of its historic district, and I don't know if you all know it, but it is really one of Virginia's oldest designated districts, and one that sets Abingdon apart in many wonderful ways. So it's a good thing to do. One thing that was not mentioned that I think is important is the fact that our district, our own district, does not match the state's footprint for our district, and it never has. And so this is just a way for it to begin to expand in order to be the same thing as the state's district, which is confusing when it's not. And the other thing is that all of these, or most of these properties within this proposed expansion are contributing properties that are worth protecting. And as you see, what makes Abingdon a wonderful place to live and to visit and to have a business is our protected building structures. So thank you. I'll be glad to answer any other questions.
Any questions for Ms. White? Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. I guess it's, you have some buildings that are not necessarily historic, and I'm looking at 333 East Main Street. And my question is, what does that do to a property like that? I mean, I like this proposal, but I'm curious to know, and I mention that one particularly because that's something that came before the Planning Commission when the building was stopped being a service station and went to this design group. So what is the requirement for somebody like that within the historic district?
Sure, and that's a really good question. There was some discussion about whether or not we would look at contributing structures only, or if we would look at both contributing and non-contributing structures. The idea behind including contributing and non-contributing is that you create a uniform district with uniform standards. So while this building that you identified, 343, is not contributing, if they were to put an addition onto the structure, if they wanted to do anything, it would be very much like you all look at it in the entrance corridor. They would look at the addition and any changes and see if it was matching the district. So obviously, it would not have the historic windows to be preserved and some of those same things, but it still would go in front of the HPRB for changes.
Okay. And another question, I note that the property, and I'm not sure the two roads, but the big white house that is currently, trying to think of a nice thing to say about it, but not in good repair. That's a historic building, but it's not included. Is there a reason for that?
We chose this as a logical point to stop. There was a number of different discussions about where it would end and where it would start, and this was what they chose for this time. One of the things that I will say is that we had Mike Pulis attend some of our meetings last year, and there is something else called a conservation district, which can be applied in some situations, and that might take in homes that have maybe not sort of reached the pinnacle of historic preservation, but you would want to ensure that they're not torn down, and you would want to ensure that things that are built and additions that are added are cohesive to the neighborhood. So this is where the logical stop was for this. In the future, there could be a desire to add maybe some less stringent requirements and create some other districts to conserve properties. So this may be not the last time you see us, and as you move forward, I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is more buildings become historic. Now, are they all contributing? They may be contributing in their own ways, but again, this was the logical point at this point.
Christy Hartshorn, 227 East Main. The one thing that we really wanted to stress with this is that we really feel it's important for our historic district to match up with the state district. And I just can't stress that enough, because I have never seen this town look better. I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like everyone has so much pride in the property, doing such a good job. And if we had, if our boundaries matched up, it's going to make it so much easier to call it the Abington Historic District, and everyone that comes here will be able to figure that out. To add that to it.
Thank you.
I would like to make just a couple comments. One, I want to thank staff for all the work. That's an immense amount over an extended period of time.
That's Gabe. He's our historic preservation planner.
Good job, young man. Second thing is, and you mentioned some of the homeowners, Mr. Dalton, but also Mr. Belcher is here this evening. And for individuals that have placed their properties within that district, want to thank you for doing so. As Ms. White stated, Abington was one of the first to enact an OH district. It's very, very important to this town, and the steps that the HPRB instituted, and the town has followed up on, everyone is to be commended.
This is in fact a public hearing, so I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to address this issue from the public? Now's the time. If not, I'll close the public hearing.
Not that you guys are probably sick of hearing from me. Yeah, I just want to voice my support for the expanding of the historic district. I think it's a shame when you look at old photos and you see these beautiful old buildings that have been torn down. And what we're doing is ensuring that that doesn't happen. And I would like to add one caveat in that what I would love to see as the historic district expands, what I would love to see would perhaps be a second look at giving the guidelines some more flexibility in using modern building practices and materials, and maybe just seeing if there's some compromise there, where as we expand the footprint of the historic district, that along with that could maybe take a fresh look to see if there's ways that we can make sure that the buildings that we are repairing in our building are able to meet building code and be built with the most durable materials as possible to ensure that the historic district stays looking as good as possible. That's all.
Just don't change the windows.
Well, I would personally echo what Mr. Berg said. I think looking at some more modern techniques that didn't change the feel of the building would be wise. One thing I think is worth mentioning is that when we recodified all of the ordinances, one of the things that we did, two things for the historic district that I think are important and I'd like to just mention. One is we noted in the ordinance that while the guidelines are there, nothing in the ordinance for the old historic district allows not to use the current guidelines or the current ordinance as related to what the planning commission does and doesn't do. The second thing is that we felt when we redid the ordinance that one of the weaknesses in the ordinance for the old historic district is that they had the ability to, when somebody wanted to change something, they had to come before the HPRB. But when a building became dilapidated, it was questionable whether the Historic Preservation Board had the power to have that building brought up to standard, and that was added in at the time the ordinance was redone. So hopefully that gave the Historic Preservation Board some power that it didn't have before, just in case a house deteriorated to the point where that was required. Any additional comments, questions?
I'll just take a moment, if you don't mind. Hugh Belcher, 350 East Main, 370 East Main, 380 East Main. So myself and my family own the largest percentage of homes, businesses in this proposed new district. And it is a little daunting to consider the improvements that will have to be made in the future and the cost and scrutiny associated with that. But my dear, dear friend Betsy White has assured me that it's well worth the investment, and I dare not stand up against Betsy White and that. So I, as gracefully as possible, submit myself to this. No, I think it's really a good idea. I applaud everyone involved.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher. Any other public wish to?
I would just like to remind everybody to try to come to our event on the 12th of October. I think you'll get a lot out of it. You'll learn some of the things we have some good speaker coming about windows for one, but I think it's a really good way to see everything that we're doing. So we're not called the historical review board, which we all know you say behind our back, so. Or hysterical, whatever you call us. Please come to that.
All right, I'm gonna, anybody else from the public wish to make a comment? If not, I'm gonna close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of the commission?
No, I'll make a motion that it be approved as submitted.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any additional discussion? If not, call the roll, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
Aye. Thank you. Okay, the next order of business is a zoning text amendment, recreational substance business. Staff report.
Okay, so this one, we know we have a lot of public hearings tonight, but this one is actually a zone text amendment. So it goes through the same process as a zone map amendment, but this is a request to change the text. And this is a request for recreational substance businesses. So as Virginia's laws have continued to shift, we have seen that there are a lot of weed, hemp, CBD, Delta-8, marijuana, cannabis, vape-type shops. And the regulation governing these facilities is in the Code of Virginia because it allowed a variety of recreational substances to be sold. And so we have been inundated with these types of businesses. Currently, not a single business in the town of Abingdon has been permitted as a cannabis shop. So that is not something that we have permitted. We have had several cannabis shops and several dispensaries come to us and specifically state that that is what they were going to do, and we have denied those business licenses and not allowed them to come into the districts. What we do see is that is also happening that is illegal is the selling and gifting on a commercial platform. There is no area within the Code of Virginia that actually allows the selling and gifting of cannabis on a commercial platform. So that is an illegal process. It is legal for people to share the plants that they have grown amongst themselves, but there isn't a commercial avenue at this time for these types of businesses. So we've talked a lot about really what are we trying to, what are we wanting to look at, what are we trying to protect, And much like other uses in the district, so similar to what we just spoke about, the Old and Historic District, the entrance corridor, we have a table in our zoning ordinance that lays out where businesses can and cannot be located based on their use. So that is basically what establishes zoning, is the idea that certain things are good here, certain things are good there, and if we look at the history of zoning, you know, it all stemmed from tenement housing in New York City. It stemmed from people not wanting to mix agricultural uses and industrial uses with residential uses. And so similar to all of that history and that process, we're basically looking at a new type of use that we are requesting that the Planning Commission recommend to the Town Council that we limit what we are calling recreational substances retail. So what are some of the things that we're looking at? We are looking at any product made from tobacco, including cigarettes, cigars, smokeless tobacco, pipe tobacco. We're looking at non-combustible products, including nicotine, vaping fluids, anything that employs a heating element. We're looking at products including raw materials from hemp that are added into food products. We're looking at Catron, which is a product that has also been added in July as on the list of things the state is looking at. And then we're looking at pipe, vaporized, or any type of device, wrapping, or accessories associated with the consumption or inhalation of the above-mentioned substances and materials. So you might ask, okay, where does that come into play when we're talking about grocery stores or, you know, pharmacies that are selling tobacco products? Where does that come into play with gas stations that people are picking these products up at? And what we are not suggesting in this is that those are limited. So we are indicating a couple of things. First of all, while it is still prohibited at the state level, we felt confident that we should add this to the zoning ordinance. No commercial retail sales of any substance containing marijuana, a synthetic, and a word that I cannot pronounce, or any synthetic derivatives of the tetrahydrocannabinol is allowed to be sold in these businesses. No adult sharing in a commercial retail space of any substance containing marijuana or any synthetic version of it. And again, we are talking about in a commercial retail space. Another piece to this that we added, that we have actually already dealt with, was that in July, the state said that no person shall advertise in or send any advertising material into the Commonwealth regarding marijuana, marijuana products, or any substance containing a synthetic version of marijuana, other than those that are allowed to be sold. So you may have seen that at one point we all, you know, we have approved several signs in the entrance corridor that we really didn't have the ability to limit, you know, whether or not it had a marijuana leaf on it or any of those things. Well, the state actually has given you all, as the zoning board, to have the ability to limit that. And so through us as staff, we have been using code compliance to eliminate signage that would indicate that marijuana is sold at businesses. What we are also specifically saying, and what this map is saying, is that any recreational substance shops, including those that are for vaping of tobacco, etc., must be located at least 2,000 lineal feet from the property line of any public or private school. And they also must be located at least 2,000 lineal feet from the property line of an existing recreational substance use. The hours of operation shall be limited to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Sunday. They are not allowed in the Old and Historic District or entrance corridor, and that is exactly what we were looking at tonight, and what we look at frequently, where businesses are or are not allowed in certain districts. They are permitted as a special use permit in B2, unless they're visible from the entrance corridor road segments of Main Street and Cummings. They are permitted by right in an M1 limited industrial zone, and it does not apply to grocery stores, gas stations, and pharmacies where greater than 75% of sales are non-recreational substances. So Essentially, what would happen is if someone came into our M1 zoning district and they wanted to permit a recreational substance, again, this does not allow them to do anything illegal, but a vape shop and those types of things, they would be allowed by right. If they wanted to be in the B2, they would be coming to you all for a special use permit. And then these other limitations would apply in relation to the influence of students K through 12 and/or others. The other piece that we're linking it to is the business license. So currently, the way that our business licenses work in town is that there is not a there's not really a way to revoke the business license if they are doing any of these illegal operations. So what we're saying here is the revocation of a business license will occur if a business is found in conflict with the allowance of legally sold products in the Commonwealth under this subtitle, Article 4.2 of the state code. And one of the things that very specifically the state is not allowing is a wide variety of restrictions on how much CBD oil now has, active marijuana in it. So we're basically taking what the state has provided in July and enacting that into the zoning ordinance. Now, will it get at every business that is illegally doing these types of things? No, because if you are coming into the zoning office and you are asking for a permit and you are asking for something that you are is not saying anything related to vaping, but what it does allow us to do is find those businesses and revoke their business license if they are in fact doing that. We're adding a couple of definitions. The first one is adult sharing of marijuana, which means transferring marijuana between persons who are 21 years of age or older. And specifically, this is coming from the state code, adult sharing does not include instances in which marijuana is given away contemporaneously with another reciprocal transaction between the same parties. 2, a gift of marijuana is offered or advertised in conjunction with an offer for the sale of goods or services. Or 3, a gift of marijuana is contingent upon a separate reciprocal transaction for goods or services. So based on the existing businesses in town, that should get after all of those. We put a definition of what marijuana is, again, from the state requirements. Any part of the plant of the genus cannabis, which, whether growing or not, its seeds or resin, and every compound, manufacture, salt, derivative, mixture, or preparation of such plant, its seeds, its resin, or any extract containing one or more cannabinoids. Delta-8 THC is illegal in the state of Virginia. Recreational substance retail off-site use is essentially saying you can't sell it. Any establishment, facility, or location where business operation involves the retail sale of recreational substances. And 2, includes recreational substances as 25% or more of the total inventory or 15% or more of the total display shelf area. So that means if we walk into a business and we've had a complaint, from a code compliance standpoint, we can discuss whether or not they can continue to have their business license. The recreational substance retail on-site use, which again we have found popping up at some facilities, is any establishment, facility, or location where the business operation allows for on-site use of recreational substances. And so that would not be allowed. So how do you all make a recommendation? What gives you the power to make a recommendation to your town council? The Code of Virginia 15.2-2283, the purpose of a zoning ordinance shall promote health, safety, or general welfare of the public. And so there's several zoning items that a text amendment has to be reviewed for. And the first one is whether the extent of which the proposed amendment is consistent with the comp plan and other long-range documents. So several items that staff has put in their findings is that Abingdon will achieve well-planned orderly growth, that Abingdon will grow its economy by helping a wide range of local and regional entrepreneurs and businesses prosper, that the town's standards for preservation will maintain the look and feel of its historic districts while allowing for economically viable reuse of the structure, that Abingdon will have a thriving tourism economy built upon 3 main pillars: arts, history, and outdoor recreation, that the town will have a wide variety of options such as lodging, restaurants, experiences, retail tours, and culinary events to meet the needs of visitors of all ages and interests, and that Abingdon will invest in activities, amenities, and experience to meet the changing needs for repeat and new travelers. The second question that must be asked is whether the proposed amendment is in conflict with any provisions of the zoning ordinance. As there will still be an allowed district, that they are allowed by right in the M1, staff does not think that this is in conflict. This is not limiting grocery stores, gas stations, or other similar uses from selling recreational substances. Whether the extent to which there are change in conditions that require an amendment, and staff would identify, yes, that the conditions have changed. We are a bordering community of a number of different states that have not allowed for more flexibility in these products, and so we are seeing an influx of these purchasing and sharing products. And whether and the extent to which the proposed amendments addresses a demonstrated community need. And again, the community's being inundated with shops that are selling recreational substances. So in order to protect the entrance corridor and the old and historic district, limiting these businesses to certain specific areas is what we're proposing with this. Again, it is, similar to any other use that is in our district. So whether the extent to which the proposed amendment would result in a logical and orderly development pattern, again, the M1 district would still allow it. Whether the extent to which the proposed amendment would result in significantly adverse impacts to the natural environment. There should be no adverse impacts to the natural environment with this zone text amendment. And whether the extent to which the proposed amendment will have a positive effect on the balance between residential and non-residential uses. And again, this request will be keeping with the similar uses that are allowed in M1 and the B2 special use permit as a special use permit in that district. So it really truly is not different than some of our other types of uses. And again, we aren't limiting existing grocery stores and other retail spaces. So with that, I can answer questions if you have any. And will need to be opened as a public hearing in the event somebody else wishes to speak to it.
Any questions for Ms. Rice? If not, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. If there's anybody from the public who wishes to address this.
I have two questions, actually. One would be, let's say one of these shops is open outside of the 2,000-foot buffer, but then, let's say somebody wants to come in and start like a Montessori school, let's say. I can see that being a small school that's occupying it would potentially be in a B2 area. Would that potential school be unable to open if it is within that 2,000-foot buffer?
No, the school would be allowed to open.
Okay.
So if you're a use that's coming to one of these, the inverse would not affect you. If you were wanting to open one of these near a school, then yes.
The other thing, and you've already addressed it, but I just want to clarify. So Blue Hill Market, they sell CBD oil. And so that would in no way be affected by this. They would see what is CBD. Well, for one, they are a grocery store, so they would be covered under that. And CBD it doesn't have THC, so would it be treated differently?
Correct.
Okay.
So yes, so basically, again, the state of Virginia did enact much more stringent rules as of July for the percentages. We're not including those in our regulations. If there was a question, obviously we could test a product. But again, the key thing is this does not apply to grocery stores, gas stations, or pharmacies where greater than 75% of sales are non-recreational substances. So even if they were selling American Spirits or organic tobacco products or even beyond just CBD oil, they would not be affected by that.
That's all. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any discussion from the Planning Commission? Is there?
I had a question, so right now you've got Catbirds selling wine and beer, that's all they sell down in the historic district. Tumbling Creek, all they sell is cider in the historic district, so why can't they sell this in the historic district? So that's my only thing. Nobody bats an eye on those other two businesses at all. There was a time when they did.
And I do think that if, you know, at some point in the future, it became a fully legal product as far as, you know, marijuana, et cetera, I think we're still looking at the look and feel of certain shops. So vape shops seem to be very bright and they use
Yeah, I can
kind of
see you
shocking
don't want
colors.
the guys with the windows,
Correct.
window lights and
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah, we're
Which
getting
you
ready to
wouldn't-
deal
Which you
with
wouldn't
that
be
one.
allowed to do
Right.
in the historic district anyway, but, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, saying Catbirds would be like a liquor store in the city or something. It's not. It's adapted to its surroundings. Anyway, that's all.
I view this more akin to methadone clinics and things of this nature as to the locations and in trying to promote, just like you were saying, trying to promote and maybe protect different schools, residential areas, and what's historic.
Yeah, and giving it a space in the M1 and in the B2 as a special use permit doesn't limit the fact that you could still open a vape shop. What it does do is it gives you all the ability to see what it looks and feels like. And then from that, you can have, yeah, a more diminutive type of storefront.
Well, and one thing about putting the ordinance in line with the state law is that we are a Dillon's Rule state. So, you know, we really need to do that because you don't want to have a distinction between your ordinance and what the state law says. It means at some point we might have to change our ordinance should the state law change. But putting it, you know, in concert with the law really is, to me, is something we really need to do. I mean, I think that really helps you when somebody comes in and says, well, I want to do this, and you don't have to get to the point of saying, well, the state law says, but our ordinance doesn't.
Correct.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any additional discussion? If not, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
One thing I would like to ask, I guess, just kind of brought it to mind, but I think we need to look at limiting where you can have stores that sell guns and ammunition would be wise. I mean, I was personally shocked to see a gun store 50 yards from the one of the two busiest grocery stores in town. That gave me some cause for concern, and I think you know, that's, again, there are going to be places where that would be appropriate, but I think in some of these places it isn't, near schools, near grocery stores and so forth. So I would ask that you take a look at that.
Okay.
All right, the next is old business matters not on the agenda. Memo for window signage. Gabe?
So here we're looking for the planning commission's interpretation. And so we've kind of talked about this in the past with window signage is one of the things. So I'm coming to you today with some changes that we would like to add possibly and get your opinion on that. So as a rule, the planning commission, through the zoning ordinance, has not issued permits for signage located on the interior to a business. Lately, we have been inundated with businesses pushing the envelope, utilizing that loophole, and producing situations like the one you see below. So this is just one example. Kind of a case study here on page 2. The zoning ordinance can only regulate nonverbal portions of a sign. However, the nonverbal portions can include location, lighting, and size. Obviously, we understand the freedom of speech rights that a residential or commercial owner has for the political signs and flags. These statements below preclude those. So staff is proposing that the regulations for signage and windows include: window signage is not allowed in the AFOS or residential districts. Window signage in the OH district must seek HBRB approval to be allowed. All the lighted window signs seen from a public right-of-way would not be allowed except for lighted hours of operation. And in other words, the open/closed style signs. No restriction on the language on those signs. Unlighted window signs are allowed in the B1, B2, B3, M1, OI, and PTD districts if the area of the sign is 10% or less of the square feet of the window glass space. For this example here, the window is approximately 12 feet by 5 feet or 60 square feet. The 10% limit would allow them 6 square feet of signage, or approximately one of the 6 signs they are currently have. Staff requests that the Planning Commission review the proposed language below. After edits and suggestions are proposed, staff will return with an ordinance amendment and resolution. I've pretty much gone over everything that we want to add. There is one part that I would just bring up to your attention. Let me just find it here real quick. So if you look on page 15, it's where the kind of the breakdown of how big a sign can be. I've added in there too that window signs are permitted only on the first floor of a building unless the business advertises only on the floor where the window sign is displayed. I researched other localities and they have the same stipulation. And then just a definition for you. Window sign means a sign painted, stenciled, or affixed entirely within or upon the flat surface of a window or door, or placed immediately behind the window so as to attract the attention of persons outside the building, but excluding merchandise in a window display. So that's the definition we would look to add. If there's any questions for me or you would like further elaboration, I can certainly do so.
I personally think this is necessary. I think particularly when you look at this particular building, I think it's something, you know, you would think that might not be something we have to do, but clearly I think we do need to do something. So what we would be doing tonight would be just simply to say, come to us with an ordinance. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Do we need a motion for that?
No, but if there's other general discussion, I guess we would just take that. If you all, if we heard, no, never mind, we still want to not, look at these types of signs, then, we don't have to come back to you. But if there's just general consensus, we'll come back to you with an actual.
Is there anybody that would be opposed to coming back with an ordinance?
Yeah, I think there's a good use for it. It's simply trying to standardize that a little bit across the board.
One thing I will say, this particular business, when these buildings were updated, there was a good bit of discussion and concern, and at one time, the commission actually halted construction. So I suspect that if we are to do something, we can expect some pushback. If that's a general consensus, then I would say come to us with an ordinance and we need to take a look at it.
Okay.
All right, waivers, no action required. One thing before we go, I'd like to see if we couldn't move the Planning Commission meeting from September 25th to September 26th. And the reason I ask that question is that September 25th is the 100-year anniversary of the Abingdon Rotary Club, and there's quite a bit of a gala and some other stuff going on that evening. And 3 of us on the commission are Rotarians, myself, Mr. Austin, and Mr. Wilson.
Well, that still leaves 4.
Sir?
That still leaves 4.
Well, and Mr. Cochran is also a member of the Abington Rotary Club.
I'm kidding, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know if that would suit. If it would, if we could do that, I sure would appreciate it.
If you all are in consensus, we will push that forward.
Okay, thank you, guys. If there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those signify by saying aye.
Okay.
Aye. Any opposed?